Hello and welcome to my most exciting teams of 2023. It was pretty much in the name. These are just the teams that I think are going to be the most exciting next season. Let's go right into it. First off, we have the obvious one. I feel like this one doesn't only go for me, but it goes for everybody. Everybody is interested to see what happens to Colorado now that they have Coach Prime. They're doing really good at the transfer portal and in recruiting, and a lot of people think this Colorado team could become a Pac-12 championship contender really soon. I greatly disagree, but nonetheless, I'm still very interested to see what happens to this Colorado team. There's not much to be said about this. I mean, this was the obvious number one pick. Number two, I'd have to say, goes to USC. Bringing back Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams and a whole heaping load of talent. They are number 4 in the transfer portal, and I think like number 6 or 7 in recruiting. Somewhere up high. I know that. I've seen their name up there. And I'm like, dude, USC was really good last season, and considering they're keeping their really good quarterback and bringing in a lot more talent, I see USC as a Pac-12 championship contender and a college football playoff contender and a national championship contender. I see them as being a very good team. I mean, after all, last season, we saw them basically miss out on the college football playoffs to 2 losses, one of them being a 1-point loss and another one being a domination by the exact same team. So I believe a lot of people questioned what USC could have done in the college football playoff rather than some teams. But I feel like this season, people are definitely going to watch this team a lot more and be very interested. Number 3, this one was difficult putting here, but I have Florida State. And I mean, I look at them. They did really good last season, one of their best seasons in a while. And they ultimately, I mean, they didn't get into the ACC championship. It was Clemson versus North Carolina, which it probably should have been Florida State. But I look at them now. They're doing really good in recruiting. They're doing really good in the transfer portal. I'm very interested to see what happens to Florida State. Right now, I don't see Clemson as a threat. I don't see North Carolina as a threat. I see Miami as a threat to Florida State, but I'm like, Florida State really has a fine, clean shot at the ACC championship and winning, and maybe even the college football playoff. And really, if you reach out there, maybe even the national championship. They still have a lot of road to go down, but I mean, right now they're in a very bad conference right now with only a small set of teams that could pose a threat. And I'm like, Florida State, I'm going to be watching this team. I mean, I'm going to be honest. This was a very fun team to watch last season. All those high-scoring games and whatnot. This was a very interesting team to watch. But I believe they definitely could take over the ACC very soon. Number 4, I have Penn State. So I kind of forgot about this team in the last couple episodes. Completely just went over my head. And ultimately, Penn State poses the bigger threat to Michigan than Ohio State does. Originally, what I said was the Big Ten was going to be between Michigan and Ohio State and who would win that. And then I completely forgot about this team. And considering the Michigan-Penn State game is going to be at Penn State, I'm like, and I think Michigan is the best team in the conference. I say Penn State is actually going to pose a bigger threat to Michigan. And you'd put Michigan up here because, they're probably the most likely team to make it to the Big Ten championship. But I'm going to choose Penn State over them because they pose the biggest threat to Michigan, which brings us to number 5, Michigan. And, I mean, they obviously have to be on this list. They did really good last season. They lost in a great game to TCU. And I think Michigan is only going to get better. They're finally starting to come around. They've beaten Ohio State twice in a row. They get Ohio State at Michigan, and their toughest game is going to be at Penn State. If they can pull that off, though, this team is going to be most likely in the college football playoff again. And, I mean, there's nothing much to be said there. I can't believe this Michigan team is doing what they're doing, though. Like, it's seriously, it's a work of art kicking Ohio State out of the freaking playoffs finally. I mean, they didn't quite do it last season. Somehow Ohio State snuck back in, but So sick and tired of seeing the Buckeyes just crush their conference. About time Michigan rose to the top. Number 6, I have another Pac-12 team, Washington. I'm very interested in this team. This might not go for everybody else, but this goes for me because of how good Washington was last season. I always question what they could have been if they didn't lose to ASU. I mean, seriously, if Washington didn't lose that game, I believe they could have gone to the college football playoff and posed a massive, massive threat. I get now against Georgia, they most likely would have been a 4 seed. And against Georgia, that would have really been tough. Even against TCU, that would have been really tough. But Georgia had that fine defense. But I still question it. I'm like, maybe Washington could have done something. And considering they're keeping Michael Penix and they're doing good in recruiting in the transfer portal, I'm very interested to see what happens to this team. Me personally, I think Washington wins the Pac-12 championship next season. But that's just a really early prediction. Number 7, UCLA, another Pac-12 team. I mean, there's a lot of Pac-12 teams on this list because of the stats don't lie. First off, Colorado is the obvious choice. Second off, USC's doing outstanding in recruiting and whatnot, and they have the Heisman Trophy winner. Washington bringing in a whole lot of talent, and they have an extraordinarily good quarterback. And ultimately, they finished off 10-2 last season after going 4-8 the season before that. UCLA had the best season they've had in years, and they're number 2 in the transfer portal, and they're doing really good in recruiting. They're bringing back a lot of talent. They've got a great quarterback coming in. I mean, the Pac-12 is doing great. Even Oregon is doing great in recruiting and in the transfer portal, and they're bringing back Bo Nix. Like, the Pac-12 is just a more interesting conference than any other conference this year for me. That's just simply it. And that's my reasoning there for UCLA. Of course, I put Georgia here. They're doing outstanding in recruiting. I think they're number 1. No, they're number 2 behind Alabama. And but they haven't really done anything in the transfer portal, and they lost Stetson Bennett. So, I mean, I'm going to put them on this list just because, they just back-to-back out of nowhere. I mean, we all thought they were not going to make it. We thought they might make it. They might lose in the SEC championship and whatnot. Nobody thought they were going to go undefeated again and kill the national championship like that. So, I'm just going to put them here because, of course, the world's going to be like, can they do it a third time? Number 9, I have Alabama because Bama is killing it in recruiting right now. I think they have 9 5-stars. Haven't done much in the transfer portal, but they're slaughtering it in the recruiting. And ultimately, I look at Alabama as a team that probably should have made it last year and honestly probably posed the biggest threat to Georgia football last year. But I guess we'll never know. And I just want to see – this team is interesting for me because I want to see how Nick Saban responds to his – I think that's like the first time he hasn't been to the college football playoff in like a couple years, let alone the national championship. But then they slaughtered Kansas State, and I just want to see how this team bounces back. I want to see what happens, and that's the main reason they're on this list for me. And number 10, TCU, again, a team got slaughtered in the college football playoff, but I think they're bringing back Max Duggan, and they're bringing in a lot of talent in recruiting in the transfer portal, and I don't know how much they bring back from the season before. But I definitely think this TCU stands another chance at going to the Big 12 championship and winning it. So that's why they're on this list. I mean, if TCU can back-to-back, that would be really, really cool. I mean, Max Duggan is a fantastic quarterback. I think he is coming back. I'm not too sure about that, though. And then our honorable mentions got a lot. We have North Carolina, Oregon, Texas, LSU, Ohio State, and Miami. North Carolina, they are doing pretty good in recruiting and stuff. Sorry for the mic noise. Oregon, like I said earlier, they're bringing in a whole lot of talent, and Bo Nix is coming back. Texas is number 3 in recruiting. I only have them at honorable mentions, though, because I don't like their quarterback. And ultimately, Texas has kind of done this where they do really good, and then they go 5 losses. LSU's doing good in recruiting and stuff, but I don't know if Jaden Daniels – I think Jaden Daniels is staying, and me personally, I don't like Jaden Daniels as an ASU fan, so I just don't care about that team. Ohio State, I don't know what the quarterback situation is there, but they are a contender for the Big Ten championship. They're number 5 in recruiting right now. And then Miami, because they pose the biggest threat to Florida State in my eyes, and they're doing really good in recruiting and whatnot. And that's pretty much it. That's all for this video. Quick little video, and that's all for me. Adios.